Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is quite a bizarre story where the UK's first ever trans judge is taking the UK government to court over the Supreme Court's decision made about transgender people and women's rights in general. So, this story, now before I start, I didn't know there was a single trans judge in the UK. I had never gave it a thought. It's not the kind of thing that bothers me so much. But this person, Victoria Mloud, as they are known now, is very front and forward about saying, I'm a trans judge and I'm the first in the UK, and up until retired a couple of months ago, the only one, right? Now, before I cover the story, I just want to show you two short clips of Judge Victoria Mloud in two different appearances on our TV screens, which are months apart. In the first one, the judge is talking about sort of general judicial business on a podcast. In the second one, the judge is invited onto CNN, a national outlet in America, to talk specifically about trans. And what I want to do is point out some peculiar differences between both the videos. Then I'll come on to the actual story about taking the UK government to court, right? So the first one is Victoria Mloud on a podcast just discussing general things, Equality Act and other legal matters. So let's just have a little look at this appearance on our TV screens.
I'm just across the way from the building, and it's good to see that the project has gone from strength to strength, and that the outputs have come to this fruition.
So to give you my opinion on that, and I would like to know yours, can you tell me if the person that you were listening to there sounded like a man or a woman? Because if that person had phoned me, I would automatically presume and assume that that was a man I was talking to. Now, if that person presented herself in front of me, I may be thinking, is that a man? If it was not for slightly unkept style of hair, I would probably be convinced that was a man. Because it sounds like a man, looks like a man, I would consider that's a man. However, remember the voice. Remember the unkept hair. Remember the distinct lack of makeup. Remember the no need for spectacles. And now I want to show you a video of the same person on TV 2 days ago.
The UK is now in absolutely prime breach of a case called Goodwin, which is what led to the legislation permitting people to change their legal sex. So the United Kingdom's going to have to address that, and I believe that the Strasbourg Court, European Court of Human Rights, is going to tell it that it must. This is really a case and guidance that's been promoted by a very tiny minority of British people. It's not reflective of the basic decency of British people. It's simply that there's been a disproportionate voice from a very well-funded lobby, and it has the ear of government, it has the ear of the press, a lot of it, but it isn't in accordance with basic British values, and I think any government that continues in the direction that it's going may well face difficulties, frankly.
Bizarre. If I now close my eyes, I may think, is that a man or a woman? Whereas previously I would probably be thinking definitely a man. So the voice of this person has somehow managed to change in a few months. And it seems to be dependent on the topic we're talking about. And also, we managed to dye her hair, find a comb and brush her hair, find a bright red lipstick, and the need for a big pair of red glasses, which we didn't need when we were talking about general litigation issues in a previous output. That's bizarre to me. It's like, not only do I want to look more like a woman because I'm talking about trans stuff, I want to sound more like a woman. Just be whatever you are without any cosplay, if you don't mind. So now on to the story. This judge, ex-judge, tried to get into the Supreme Court hearing to give her input into it, and was refused, and is now going to take the British government to the European Court. And let me just read the story. Surprisingly or not, The Guardian covered it. And its story says, Britain's first transgender judge is taking the UK to the European Court of Human Rights over the Supreme Court's ruling on biological sex. The UK Supreme Court ruled earlier this month that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act referred only to a biological woman and to biological sex, with subsequent guidance from the Equality Watchdog amounting to a blanket ban on the trans people using toilets and other services of the gender they identify as. Victoria Mcleod, a retired judge, is applying to the European Court of Human Rights to bring action against the UK for infringement of her Article 6 rights. Article 6 of the Human Rights Convention guarantees the right to a fair trial for both criminal and civil matters. And this is what the judge is arguing. Last year, Mcleod sought to have leave to join the litigation in the Supreme Court case brought by gender-critical campaigners for Women Scotland against the Scottish Government, arguing it could significantly affect legal protections for transgender women, but was rejected. So basically the court looked at this appeal for her to come and give evidence, and they went, well, no really, we don't need it. Mcleod, who is now a litigation strategist at W Legal, told The Guardian, the basis is that the Supreme Court refused to hear me or my evidence to provide them with information about the impact on these trans people affected by the judgment and failed to give any reasons. Those are the two basic premises of normal justice. There were protest groups speaking on behalf of, this bit's good, on behalf of women in the court case, but ordinary women were not actually represented as a whole. I've seen a few bits of coverage for Women Scotland, and I'm quite sure they are ordinary women. What ordinary women do you think were not given represented in this case? Now it gets a bit weirder. The next bit of the argument is proper potty. The disabled people were also not represented. And now we're seeing the Conservatives saying that trans people have got to use disabled loos, which impacts the lives of disabled people. The impacts of all of us, of all of this, have now been dealt with. Right, so we're having a pop because disabled people weren't taken into this court case. But the court didn't tell anybody to use disabled toilets. That's other people out with the court whose opinion has been, well, maybe trans people should use disabled toilets. So your argument that disabled people were not listened to in the court case that really didn't affect disabled people is bunkum. And I'm quite sure somebody somewhere in that court case would in fact have been disabled. And the reason I can say that with some confidence is the amount of people who are disabled these days, and they're not all visible disabilities. So I find it quite peculiar that such a learned person should be so naive to suggest not a single disabled person, and I actually find it quite disingenuous that not a single disabled person took part in any of that court proceeds. How would you know? Do we stop people at the door before they go into court and say, excuse me, are you disabled? I don't think we do. And the other argument against that disabled bit, the court didn't rule anything to do with disabled people in other toilets. Now, I have heard some people say, well, why don't trans people use disabled toilets? And like, okay, I hear you, but I think that's a bit weird. But in defence of that opinion, women's bathrooms and men's bathrooms tend to be multi-use. People can, you can have a number of people in them. Disabled bathrooms tend only to have one person, the disabled person, or two people a disabled person, and a carer if they need assistance. They don't tend to be set up in multi-user spaces. They tend to be a smaller room designed for one or maybe two people, depending on the disabled person's needs. And often double up as family bathrooms for those with young babies or children who want to help them. So disabled bathrooms are not technically unique to disabled people even now. But if disabled people were like, oh, I don't want trans people in my bathroom, that would be down to them. But I don't think, and the only issue you could have with disabled persons is if there was only one disabled facility and their need was stopped because somebody who evidently wasn't disabled, although some people argue was in the bathroom. So that would kind of be it. Anyway, the Supreme Court judgment and subsequent guidance from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, the watchdog that enforces the Equality Act, has sent shockwaves through the UK's transgender community and left many businesses and services unclear about what facilities they are expected to offer. Well, it was quite clear, too, because you're either a man or a woman, and that'll be how you were decided at birth, not what you decided later on in your life to change to. In an interim update on how the ruling should be interpreted, the AHRC said on Friday that in workplaces and services open to the public, such as hospitals or cafes, trans women should not be permitted to use the women's facilities, and trans men should not be permitted to use the men's facilities. Hallelujah! Men are men and women are women. Over the weekend, the Cabinet Minister Pat McFadden said it was a logical consequence that transgender people would be banned from using the toilets of the gender they identify as. Well, yeah, and I don't think anybody needs to question that. That's exactly what said. There's chaos because we've got Supreme Court saying one thing, we've got government and ERC saying another. We've got planning rules in the government set whereby inclusive bathrooms are supposed to be discouraged. There is no chaos. This is people acting like children, stamping their feet and saying, see, I'll use people in the majority, like 99.95% of the rest of the population. Well, we want to decide where we pee, not you, regardless of what you feel about it. We want to play sports in whatever gender we decide, not what 99.95% of the rest of the population do, and that is stick to sports and the sex you were born in. But according to this judge, there's chaos. Absolutely bonkers. McLeod's comments came as Carla Denyer, MP for the Green Party and co-leader, asked how the government would respond to both to distress within the trans community and further confusion to employers, business and service providers who are trying to understand what the Supreme Court ruling actually means. If you don't know what the court ruling actually means, you shouldn't be an MP. Staying up to date with events around the world can be difficult, where it's impossible to consult a single source for the full story. Narratives that shape public opinion often just reinforce media and corporate-backed vested interests. It's hard to know what information to trust. See what the media is exaggerating, sensationalising, over or under reporting. That's why I've been using Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if it has any political bias, how reliable the reporting is, and who owns them. They even have a blind spot feed that highlights news disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. Take a data-driven view on the news and stay current. Get news from thousands of sources worldwide in one place. I've been using Ground News to help me get all the world's news in one place and give a more balanced opinion on what we read and viewing who is telling us the truth and who isn't. Subscribe via my link to get 40% off the Vantage subscription. It's the one I use to get unlimited access to every feature. Your subscription can not only help my channel, but also help Ground News, as it makes the media landscape more transparent. It's bonkers. And this is something I've said a million times, right? See, when the minority have a need that they want the rest of us to abide by. I'll give you an example. Gay men wanted to get married decades ago, right? Well, what we've done as society, now some people are really against it, right? But I think the common sense and logical approach is what you want going to affect the rest of the people who are not in your minority? Now, evidently with gay marriage, the answer, although some people disapproved of it, did it affect the rest of us? Well, no, not really. So what society done said, well, okay, that sounds sensible. Well, let's do that then. But what we've got here is the minority, which is a far lesser number than even the number in the minority of lesbian and gay people. The T community is smaller again. So that's really small bit, like 0.5% or between 0.5% up to 1% of our society, saying, no, we want to be where we want. Well, does that affect the rest of the people? Oh, yes, it does. Now, yes, there's some people in the majority go, I'm not bothered, I don't care one way or another. That is true. But there are people in the majority who say, no, we don't really want that. We don't want you peeing in the same place as my daughter. We don't want you peeing in the same place as my wife. We don't want you playing sports with my niece. Right? We would rather you didn't. Thank you very much. So that's a totally different concept when a minority wants something, but it actually does affect the majority. So in cases like that, do you know what I've got to do? I've said, look, we've had a wee look there, but we can't help you. And on this occasion, we're really sorry, we can't help you. But that's not the society we live in just now. We live in a society where we've been telling everybody for decades, if you feel persecuted at all and you're in the minority for anything, you need rights. Okay, let's go down that road. What rights do you want? What rights do the trans people want? Because I'm fed up asking. I must have asked 10 times a day for the last week on Twitter when I've seen somebody talking about trans rights. I say, well, what is it you need? What rights is it you need? We need rights to survive. Well, you kind of got that. And it's just nonsense. But that's because we, for probably a generation now, have built a society where, we must pander to the minority, regardless of the consequences. But what I'm glad to report is, I have seen a switch away from that recently, where people are going, nah, we're not doing it anymore. And I hope that continues. So, if you enjoyed the video, you want others to see it, do 1, 2 or 3 of the following things. Thumbs up, comments, and hit share. That would be great. If you've not already done so, please subscribe and hit the notifications bell for the channel. However, what I always say, the most important thing of all, unless you're a crackpot who should know better, because at the end of the day you're a judge, oh no, you're a doctor now, who demands rights that some people have already got, because we keep going on about trans rights are human rights. Okay. So, unless you're one of those people, not you, but
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.